Sightings of UFOs, reports of abduction, and close encounters are not the only potential evidence of alien visitation. Ufologists believe the Nazca lines of Peru and crop circles are also forms of UFO communication. Now, after more than 20 years of study, some experts believe further proof of extraterrestrials on Earth can be found in the bizarre deaths of cattle. Cattle mutilation. The most recent outbreak appears to have been in a three-county area of northeastern Alabama. Over 50 cases of mutilation have been reported in just the past 6 months. Ted Oliphant is a Fife police officer who has personally investigated more than 30 cattle mutilation cases.
We're finding the same thing over and over again. The sex organs have been removed from the animals, the tongues have been cut out of them, the jaws have been stripped into oval, cleaned to the bone, and all without blood.
Researchers have little to go on beyond these decomposing carcasses. And despite attempts to prove that a sinister force is at work here, some experts believe the mutilations are all the result of natural causes.
It leads us to think maybe that animal is getting mutilated, but what's happening is predators, vultures, are also involved with that process.
The indication that the predators are not responsible for these animals being cut on is the evidence of high heat at the excision, evidence of high heat in excess of several hundred degrees or more, according to the pathologist who studied the tissue samples.
That pathologist is Dr. John Altschuler. He has studied suspect cattle tissue for the last 4 years.
The tissue at the incisional areas is very firm and very hard and looks burned. And the microscopic evidence clearly indicates that heat has been applied, and predators, to my knowledge, cannot do that. Here we have a photomicrograph taken of the hide from an animal where we've had evidence of burning. The arrow shows a pink color to the tissue underneath the lining of the hide. As we move towards the cut area, you notice a definite color change from pink down here to blue up here. This is a very typical change of exposure of tissue to heat.
A white flaky substance was recovered from one Alabama location. Officer Oliphant had it analyzed at one Eastern university.
And they determined that it was composed of aluminum, titanium, silicon, and oxygen. Aluminum and oxygen, or aluminum oxide, is what's used in the styptic pencil that I use if I've cut myself after shaving, and that stops bleeding. Perhaps that has something to do with why the animals don't have blood on them at the excision lines.
In more than half of the Alabama cases, farmers report seeing an unmarked helicopter leaving the scene just before or after a cattle mutilation.
They had a chopper in behind my barn. Had all my cattle rounded up in behind the barn. The chopper, when it appeared, it was kind of unordinary. It looked like it's sitting on a box, you know. Of course, it was big enough to get a cow in, you know. If they catch them hovering over their cattle and pasture, I'd probably shoot him. Probably shoot him.
Loud helicopter noise, sounded like it was right over the trailer. Went out the front door, went over to my car, returned the seat, pulled out a handgun. I walked towards the edge of the trailer. I saw the helicopter. It's a light blue helicopter, no markings, no numbers, and it was hovering about 15 foot above the tree. I dropped my holster, and the helicopter veered off.
I think the greatest mystery of this case is the lack of physical evidence that we found at the sites. Only in one case did we find that white flaky material. We haven't been able to find footprints, we haven't been able to find tracks or wheel marks or anything to indicate that anybody's even been in there. How do you explain that? We can't.
My tendency to believe is it's something of a lot higher intelligence than what we've got in normal everyday occurrence around here.
Don't really have any ideas who could be doing it or the reasons behind it, you know. You could get most of the parts they removed from a slaughterhouse for free, you know.
Yes, sir, I run a meat processing plant, and I made a statement that I would donate them jawbone, their blood, their rectum, and whatever, you know, if they just asked me for it, and then they wouldn't have to kill these farmers' cattle like they do.
Despite the willingness of the ranchers to cooperate with authorities in a larger scale investigation, most government officials are sticking to the predator theory. They do not believe that high tension lines in the area are somehow related to the mutilations. They also deny charges that the government is mutilating cattle in order to support new technology, replacing human blood with bovine blood. And what about the unmarked helicopters? Do they point to the existence of a conspiracy?
I think the helicopters are doing the same thing we're doing on the ground. I think they're investigating who's doing this. They're trying to find out too. And because of their behavior, it's obvious that they'd rather have us think that they're doing it than what's actually happening.
One of the most intriguing aspects of our investigation is what we didn't find. The moment our sightings team arrived in Fife, the mutilations stopped. Did our presence scare someone or something away? Or was it merely coincidence that our investigation coincided with an end to this bizarre phenomenon? Eli Hornick is a rancher in northern New Mexico who has experienced the horror of cattle mutilation firsthand. Recently, Hornick participated in a sightings investigation of animal mutilation in the Southwest. Since his participation, Hornick informs us that the mutilations have not only continued, but seem to be increasing.
The tongue was missing.
When we found the animal, it couldn't have been there no longer than 12, 13 hours because I was there at 6:30 in the evening. I was back there at 7 o'clock the next morning. It wasn't maybe 600 yards from the ranch house. And this animal was it had been mutilated. There's no blood, no tracks, no sign of nothing.
It's a pattern that continues to be all too familiar for many ranchers in the Southwest. And now there's a strange new development.
We've had a disturbing new trend where ranchers inadvertently are touching these carcasses, and they're developing what could be, I guess, likened to a chemical-like burn.
I stuck my thumb in the animal's mouth, and when I stuck that my thumb in there, well, it burned for about 2 weeks. I mean, I would say it would be like a battery acid burn or something, you know, like that.
Since our last report, the border area between New Mexico and Colorado has been hit hard. Ranchers there tell sightings that animals are decomposing at an unnaturally rapid rate, and the body count is up.
We're having mutilations that are occurring on almost a weekly basis.
They seem to be expanding outwards from this area. About a week and a half after the sighting segment aired, we had 2 cases in Saguache County, Colorado, which is about 80 miles north of here.
I think they're coming down out of the air with some kind of air equipment, picking them up, taking them, bringing them back and laying them down. Somebody, somewhere in this country knows what's going on. I mean, it just seems like every time we try to do an investigation, try to get something started, it comes to a dead end. We can't get senators, congressmen, you know, it just get a lot of publicity, but it just dies. You know, it doesn't seem like, you know, it's a crime. You know, this is real monetary value. This is my living. You know, it's cost me thousands of dollars already. They're taking my living away from me. It's just outright thievery.
Our government has the capacity to monitor any square acre of ground in this country if they want to. If they are not part of the problem and they are truly as baffled about this as the ranchers and investigators like myself are, let's catch whoever or whatever is mutilating cattle.
Ranchers and private investigators say they smell a rat. They are beginning to believe that there is a government conspiracy of silence at the heart of the mutilation phenomenon.
We was cutting hay in one of the meadows, and this helicopter was right there. It looked to me like a big military-type helicopter. No numbers. And that night we had a mutilation.
I think people are scared to pay attention. They're scared. This is something of the unknown, and they just don't want to get involved. And it's a very frightening thing, especially when you see these things. You know, my God, they could come after me. Maybe they'll start on humans next. I hope not.
Finally, someone in Washington is taking the cattle mutilation problem seriously. This is a letter written by New Mexico Senator Pete Domenici requesting that the Livestock Board provide him with a detailed status report on the progress of their cattle mutilation investigation. For ranchers like Eli Hornick, it's the first sign of official support for a phenomenon that has plagued them since 1967.
Unusual Sightings on the Sci-Fi Channel.